This is lecture 7 from chapter 17, and we're picking back up. We were talking in the last lecture about physical defenses, and this one is going to talk about, at the beginning, behavioral defenses and then other interactions between organisms. So with the behavioral defenses, again, we're talking about interactions between predator and prey, so predation. And the thing is with behavioral defenses, there are different options. So you can have passive behaviors, so you can do things like hiding or escaping, like running away, or you can alarm call. So some organisms will yell at their predators, or they will be in groups and they will yell to warn other members of their groups. And I don't know if anybody has ever watched Meerkat Manor, but that's what meerkats do. Or you can fight back, and there are different ways that you can fight back if you're a prey organism. So hiding can be different depending on your organism. So most of us think about hiding as like, a rabbit or something like that, just hiding in a bush or just crouching down and hiding. But you can also hide in a group. So this is a fish ball. This is a bunch of very small fish all hiding as a group. You may have seen birds do this as well. This is why a large flock of birds all take off at the same time rather than taking off one at a time, because you're more likely to be okay and escape from a predator if you're in a big group than if you took off by yourself. If you were by yourself, you're more likely to be, hit by that predatory hawk, or in this case, a predatory shark. Then if you're in a big group, you may still be eaten, but there are a whole bunch of you to choose from rather than just the one of you to zoom in on and pick out. The other one you can see down here for fighting back. Yeah, you can use your beak and your claws to fight back, but another option is to vomit. So there are organisms that use vomit as a defense mechanism against predation. There are other ones that also use feces and urination as defense mechanisms. It sounds gross, but hey, whatever works to protect you from being eaten, well, you're going to use it. One of the ones that you should know about around here in Ohio is the turkey vulture. Turkey vultures, if you're not aware, are scavengers, so they eat dead organisms, and they have this fight back mechanism for vomiting. They can projectile vomit over 10 feet. So don't work on attacking turkey vultures, because they will use that projectile vomiting fight defense. So we've been talking about defenses, physical defenses, and behavioral defenses for prey, but there are also adaptations for enhancing predation. So think about, predators getting faster, getting bigger teeth, things like that. Those are the ones we usually think of, but there are some really cool predator adaptations. So like the camouflage for praying mantises, but this is probably one of my favorites. And this is the anglerfish. It's a deep sea fish, and they have evolved structures that actually fish for other organisms. So this one, and these are actually found not just in the deep sea, but also in coral reefs and so forth. They all have this structure. They basically have a little fishing pole that hangs on basically the end of their nose, and they can wiggle it back and forth. And this one that lives in the deep sea has a bioluminescent end on it. So in the deep ocean where there's no light, suddenly there's this little light wiggling around. So it attracts things to come over, and it gets a little too close, and these big nasty teeth will chomp into it. The guys that live in the reefs that are these kinds of anglerfish, they look like rocks usually, but they have these little lures that look like little worms or something like that, and they jiggle them around, and they do the same sort of thing. So predators can have some pretty cool adaptations in order to lure their prey in, rather than having to go and run after it all the time. All right, so we've talked about competition. We've talked about predation. The next one is parasitism. So this is an interaction between two organisms, but predation or parasitism is a form of predation because the organism that is the parasite is feeding off of the host, the organism that they're on or in. The reason why it has its own group, its own classification, is because the parasite is not generally going to kill the organism it's living on or in. That actually would be counterproductive for the parasite. Usually parasites need their host, not just for food, but to be able to finish their life cycle. So these parasites are going to be much smaller than their host versus what we see with predator and prey. Predator-prey, the prey is usually much bigger than the prey. So that way they can catch them and kill them and eat them. By the way, before I forget, don't forget predators for the predator-prey relationship. We often think of carnivore, predator-prey relationships, but remember, herbivores are also predators. They just don't have to chase down their food. So, all right, so parasites. We do have two different groups of parasites. So parasites are either ectoparasites or endoparasites. Ecto for the ones that live on or outside of their hosts. So examples of ectoparasites that you'd probably be familiar with would be things like bed bugs, teas. I was going to say fleas and ticks, and then I just made them into one animal. Leeches. Those are all good examples of ectoparasites because they're going to be on the outside of the organism. They don't have to stay for a very long period of time in order to be a parasite. They just need to feed off of that organism. Endoparasites, on the other hand, these guys are going to live inside of their host. So where they live inside just depends on their lifestyle. The one that you're seeing up here, this is trypanosoma. This is African sleeping sickness. This one is found in the blood, so that's why you see the red blood cells there in the picture. This one's similar in a way to Plasmodium, the parasite, the protist that we talked about in the microbes chapter, because that one is another blood parasite. The thing is that we have other endoparasites. They don't all live in our bloodstream. There are other endoparasites. So if you've ever had to take your dog or your cat in to have them treated for worms, either heartworm or intestinal worms, those worms are endoparasites. Humans can have tapeworms. So they are found in our digestive system. There are also flukes, which are found in various organisms. We'll see one of those later on. And the thing is that there may be way more parasitic species on the planet than non-parasitic species. There are also parasitic plants. Mistletoe, which is a popular plant around the holidays in the winter, is actually a parasitic plant. It feeds off of other plants. So there are lots and lots of parasites out there. So what's unique about parasites? Well, they are predators, but they have unusual challenges. One is size. Parasites are always smaller than their host. Think about it. If you were being chased after by a dog-sized tick, you would notice. But ticks are small, so that works for their advantage. They do need to stay in contact with their host for at least some period of time. And so their small size helps with that as well. They do need to live off their host without killing it. And so this is why many of them only feed for a short time, or they don't make a huge impact on a host, don't make them very ill, because you make your host ill, they will notice and tend to get rid of you. And they need to be moved around. And so this is actually related to their life cycle. Many of the parasites have a very complicated life cycle, as we'll see, and they usually have more than one host species, which actually helps with them getting dispersed and moved from place to place. And so they actually generally live in different parts of the organisms to help them get moved around in that way. So let's take a look at a couple of these parasites. So this one is always amusing. So some parasites can actually get their hosts to do some really odd things. So the parasite here is this one here, Toxoplasma, and it causes toxoplasmosis. It is a parasite that is transferred back and forth between rats and cats. It can be transferred to humans. This is why it is not recommended for pregnant women to empty cat litter boxes, because it can be transferred to us. The only time it's dangerous to humans is actually during pregnancy. The rest of the time, there's no harm in us being infected with this parasite. So what does this parasite do? Well, what's funny is it is going to infect rats. So when it infects a rat, that's the one that it changes. So what it's going to do is it's going to change the behavior of a rat. So if you think about rats, rats are going to be scared of cats, right? Normally a rat smells or hears a cat and it's going to run the other direction. But if a rat is infected with toxoplasma, it's actually going to look for cats. It's going to search them out. It likes the smell of cats. It's going to smell, it actually, we found out they like the smell of cat urine. It's really weird. If a cat comes into a room where there's a rat with toxoplasma, the rat will just sit there. It won't run away. It won't even sometimes even acknowledge that there's a cat. And this is what toxoplasma wants. It wants the cat to eat the rat, because that will help it complete its life cycle, because it needs to go through the cat's digestive system in order to complete the life cycle for toxoplasma and then reinfect a new rat. So kind of weird as far as that goes, but not the weirdest. So this video I'm going to link along with the lectures, the Lancet Fluke. This one actually creates, again, odd and risky behaviors. This actually turns insects into zombies. So enjoy that video when you get to watch it. And then this next picture usually freaks people out a little bit. This is another parasite. He's right here. Isn't he cute? This is a parasite that infects fish. It gets in when the fish either inhales water with them or swallows water with this guy in it when they're very little. And what happens is this guy gets in and actually eats the tongue off of the fish, the tongue and the little muscles that are right here, and then clamps on and holds on. He is vaguely related to pill bugs, but this is a parasitic version, and then he's just gonna hang out in there. He'll eat some of the food that comes in through the fish. That's part of why he's considered a parasite. And well, and then he's also become a fish's tongue. They can become problematic if they get too big and actually kill the fish. It's not normal, but it can happen, because they can actually put pressure on the breathing apparatus, the gills and so forth, on the fish, and can actually suffocate them. All right, so I've got just a couple more types of interactions I will put in the last video. So enjoy the videos for the Lancet